Okay, so make sure that's going. We left off with Moody doing the unforgivable curses. And we saw him pull the first spider out of the jar and do the imperial curse, and the spider danced and everything. He kind of upbraided them. Talks about constant vigilance. He says, okay, page 213. Another one. Give me another illegal curse. Hermione's hand, And Neville just kind of has his hand up. And Moody looks at Neville and says, yes, Cruciatus curse. Your name's Longbottom. Neville nods. This needs to be a bit bigger. So he pulls the spider out, puts an engorgement charm on it so it gets really big. Raises his wand, points it at it, and says, Crucio. And the spider's legs curl in on itself, and it rolls over on its back and just kind of rocks back and forth, like somebody in pain. No sound comes, but Harry was sure that if it could have given voice, it would have been screaming. Hermione yells at him to stop it. She's looking not at the spider, but at Neville, who, we're told, his hands are clenched upon the desk in front of him, like this, and his knuckles are white and his eyes wide and horrified. We find out later why. Moody. Pain. You don't need thumb screws or knives to torture someone if you can perform the Cruciatus curse. That one was very popular once, too. We're going to see it in later novels, being performed on people. Right. Anyone know any others? There's silence. Hermione, it's like she's too stupid to realize, I shouldn't be. Avada Kedavra? He says, yes, last and the worst, the killing curse. He puts his hand into the jar, and it's like the spider knows what's coming, because it's scuttling away from him. He pulls it out, puts it on the desk, and as it starts to scuttle frantically away, Avada Kedavra, top of 216. There's a flash of blinding green light, rushing sound as though a vast invisible something was soaring through the air. Instantaneously, the spider rolled onto its back, unmarked but unmistakably dead. Several of the students stifled cries. Ron had thrown himself backward. Moody, not nice, not pleasant. And there's no counter curse, no blocking it. Only one known person has ever survived it, and he's sitting right in front of me. All eyes go on Harry. He's like, thank you. Again, everybody focused on me. So that was how his parents had died. Exactly like that spider. Well, what memories or dreams has Harry had in the past? A flash of green light. He's never known what that came from. Had they been unblemished and unmarked too? Had they simply seen the flash of green light and heard the rush of speeding death before life was wiped from their bodies? Notice, they hear a rushing sound through the air. Harry assumes it's the sound of speeding death. Is that speeding death coming to them or death leaving? He'd been picturing his parents' death for years, for 3 years now. He'd wondered about it because of the memories that, the Dementors brought out, how James Potter had tried to hold him off, how Voldemort advanced on Harry. Notice, he's thinking all this while what's going on? Okay, Moody starts talking again, and Harry kind of comes out of this, reverie, for lack of a better word, and he hears Moody. Avada Kedavra is a curse that needs a powerful bit of magic behind it. You all could get your wands out and what? Hit me with it, he says, and I probably wouldn't get more than a nosebleed. No counter curse. So why am I showing it to you? He says, if there's no counter curse, why am I showing you? What good can you possibly learn from learning this? Because you've got to know. What's he mean? What's the worst you can face? That's what you got to face. You've got to appreciate what the worst is. You don't want to find yourself in a situation where you're facing it. In other words, you want to do whatever is in your power to make sure you aren't in a situation where Avada Kedavra is staring you down the wand tip. That's what you're up against. Constant vigilance. Now those 3 curses, and he mentions them again, he says the use of any one of them on a fellow human being is enough to earn a life sentence in Azkaban. That's what you're up against. That's what I've got to teach you to fight. You need preparing. Can they learn how to fight off an Imperius curse? Yes. Can you learn how to defend yourself against a Crucio? Yes. Can you learn how to defend yourself against an Avada Kedavra? Maybe in one slight instance. When the person cursing you has a wand that is the brother of the wand you're using. Other than that, you're toast. Okay? So, they take notes on the unforgivable curses, etc., etc. And Moody takes Neville up to his office to give him some tea. And Ron says, page 219, some lesson though, eh? Fred and George were right, weren't they? He really knows his stuff. Moody, doesn't he? When he did Avada Kedavra, the way that spider just died, just snuffed it right, and then Ron kind of like remembers, oh yeah, Harry saw his parents die. Let's see here. Let's skip a bit more and go on to page 226. Okay, now remember, Harry wrote Sirius relatively early in the summer, okay? Because he had a bad dream and his scar hurt. Notice how trite that makes it sound. He had a bad dream and his scar hurt. He gets a letter back from Sirius. I'm flying north immediately. This news about your scar is the latest in a series of strange rumors that have reached me here. If it hurts again, go straight to Dumbledore. They're saying he's got Mad-Eye out of retirement, which means he's reading the signs. What signs? Does Sirius allude to any signs? No, he doesn't. Other than Mad-Eye Moody's out of retirement. Okay, what do we know? What have we been told about Mad-Eye Moody?
He was one of the greatest orators.
He was a great orator. Okay. What else?
He's constantly
Constantly
on guard.
on guard. What else?
He shoots first and asks
She
questions.
shoots first and asks questions later.
He goes down to the Death Eater's level, stoops down there.
Stoops to their level. Did I hear it? Paranoid.
That's a magic eye that can see everything.
He has a magic eye that sees things, Okay. And what does Harry immediately think about Sirius? It's the same thing he thinks at the end of book 3 about if Voldemort comes back. Voldemort comes back, why? If. Harry tells Dumbledore, it's my fault. He thinks here, if Sirius comes up here and gets captured, it's what? It's his fault. Okay? How long does it take Harry to learn this lesson? Yeah.
Because at the end he still blames something.
No, he doesn't learn it by the end of book 5. Because if he had learned it, he wouldn't have done something that he does in book 5, which causes something else to happen. Okay? If Sirius came back 227 and got caught, it would be Harry's fault. No. If Sirius came back and got caught, whose fault would it be? Why? Because he's the one who came back. Okay? Because it's his own volition. It's his own will, his own choice. If he gets caught, it's because of his stupidity, you could say. Why hadn't he, Harry, kept his mouth shut? A few seconds pain, he'd had to blab. So that lesson hasn't sunk through, all right? So he writes Sirius a letter. Nah, I was just kidding, I imagined my scar was hurting. So, chapter Beauxbatons and Durmstrang, page 230. Moody is going to do imperious curses on the students. And Hermione's like, well, but it's illegal. You said, you go away to Azkaban. He says, Dumbledore wants you taught what it feels like. Are we ever actually told that? Does Dumbledore ever actually confirm that? No, he doesn't. But he says, if you'd rather learn the hard way, go on. And Hermione's like, hell no, man. I want to see this. So he starts. We see Dean Thomas hop 3 times around the room singing the national anthem. We see Lavender Brown imitate a squirrel. We see Neville perform a series of quite astonishing gymnastics he would certainly not have been capable of in his normal state, especially not Neville film version in Goblet of Fire. Neville maybe Deathly Hallows, yeah, because, he went from pudgy little nerd kid to stud boy, okay? So he says, all right, Potter, you next. It was the most wonderful feeling. Harry felt a floating sensation as every thought and worry in his head was wiped gently away, leaving nothing but a vague, untraceable happiness. Why?
Someone else is in control.
Keep going. Someone else is in control. What does that mean?
Nothing's his fault. He
Okay.
has no desire. He has no reason to be doing anything.
You're all getting really close. You dig down just a little bit deeper. There's no I there when you're under the Imperious Curse, when you're properly under the Imperious Curse. What happens to the I, the will? It disappears. This is bliss. Because if there's no I, then there's no separation from everything else. You just kind of become one with the whole universe. Okay? He stood there feeling immensely relaxed, only dimly aware of everyone watching him. And then he hears Mad Eye's voice. Jump onto the desk. Jump onto the desk. He bends his knees, notice, obediently, preparing to spring. Jump onto the desk. And then a little voice says, why? Notice, in the back of his brain, what's the voice? Yes?
Do you think that everyone feels like that on the Imperious Cruise, or is it especially strong like that for Harry because he kind of feels the weight of the world on his shoulders?
I think it's the way everyone feels. Okay? And I think the reason we're told, or we see first, Harry has the little voice that says, why? Is because of what Moody is going to say a moment about Harry. Okay? It's about his character, his strength of character. No, I don't think I will, says this voice. Now, a little more firmly. Why? It's the I asserting itself. Jump now. And so, part of Harry tries to jump, part of Harry tries not to jump. So what does he do? He smacks his shins into the edge of the desk. That's more like it, growls Moody. Look at that, you lot. Potter fought. He fought it. He damn near beat it. So he does it to Harry several more times. He put Harry through his paces 4 times in a row until Harry could throw off the course entirely. So why could he? What did he say previously it took? Strength of character. So why does Harry have strength of character and Neville doesn't? I chose Neville intentionally. Has Harry been through more than Neville? Not necessarily, though. Does Neville live with a cousin who beats him up constantly? Or did beat him up constantly from like the age of 1 to 11? No, he didn't.
But his whole family was like emotionally abusive and like would throw him off things to try and make him do magic.
Okay, so he had the emotional abuse or neglect. Yeah, and they would, drop him off the roof to see if he would, and he did. I mean, he's not a squib, obviously. Okay. What else? What does Neville not have that Harry has? Louder. Okay, he doesn't have confidence. Why not?
He's always forgetting stuff.
He's a bumbler. Okay. Does Harry bumble? Sometimes, not usually. Does Neville get picked on by other students? Yeah. Does he get picked on by teachers? Snape. Does Harry get picked on by Snape? Yes. Does he ever rise to the occasion in Snape's classes? Usually not. Okay. But Harry saw his parents die. Neville didn't. Okay. Neville did see his parents. I can't say that yet. Neville did see his parents. We'll just leave it at that. Okay. Yes.
Could part of it also be what we find out in book 7, where Harry has an extra kind of
Possibly. Possibly, but I don't think that adds to Harry's character. If anything, that's a distraction, or would be a detraction from his character.
Something that he actively finds.
Yeah.
See that
Well, we see that in book 5. Well, does he actively fight it? We'll hold that idea. But Harry has had to do what throughout his life that we don't get the same impression Neville has. Harry has to overcome adversity from the age of 1 until the age of 11. Okay? What else? When he first puts the sorting hat on, what does it tell him? Not a bad mind. Talent, oh my goodness, yes.
And
Desire to prove himself. Why? Well, what did Ollivander say to him? We must expect great things from you, Mr. Potter. Okay? Which is, just piling more of the weight of the world on his shoulders. So he has to overcome all of this, because what does he know? He is always what? He's like, if you saw the Hamlet play here the other night, Ophelia says about Hamlet, he is the most observed of all observers. She implies there everybody in Denmark is spying on everybody else. But everybody is spying on Hamlet. He's the one most watched. That's what Harry has to go through. I mean, he meets Amos Diggory. Harry, yeah, it's me. Okay. He's always got to live up to that. So he's always got to seemingly live up to these expectations. So he's able to put it off. What I think is a more important question, given what we learn by the end of the novel, why does this Mad-Eye, a.k.a., going to give it away, Barty Crouch Jr., teach Harry this? I mean, he's taking away one of his master's weapons,
That
right?
might just be to test his strength of character.
Okay.
To report back.
Could be.
or maybe to prepare him for the others in the maze.
Could be. Okay. What else could it be?
Getting a little stab at him.
Possibly. Make the hunt a little more, what's the phrase? Yeah. To draw out the kill a little bit. I mean, we're going to see when Voldemort and Harry duel, what does Voldemort do first? Bzzz. And he says, that hurt, didn't it, Harry? You don't want me to do that again, do you? What's he doing? Put that in the natural world. That's a cat and a mouse. Cats don't just go up and catch mice, one fell swoop, slit the neck, be at peace, little brother. No, what do? They bat them around, they let them go. They pounce on them, they bat them around, they let them. They draw that out. I've watched one of our cats do that literally for over an hour. Sadistic little buggers, okay? Doesn't that kind of describe Voldemort to a T? What did we see the Death Eaters do at the Quidditch World Cup?
Dangle muggles up.
Dangle muggles and mothers because they could. Okay, why? Mr. Weasley said half the murders before. Well, what? For fun, just for fun. Okay, so they leave that class, and Harry, page 232, says, the way he talks, you'd think we're all going to be attacked any second. Okay, that kind of gets at Moody's paranoia. Ron, yeah, I know. Talk about paranoid. No wonder they were glad to get shot of him at the ministry. Did you hear him telling Seamus what he did to that witch who shouted boo behind him on April Fool's Day? And when are we supposed to read up on resisting the Imperious Curse? If it takes strength of character to resist the Imperious Curse, how much strength of character can you get from reading a book? What's it going to take? Experience, hardship. Okay? So, we get.
That wouldn't be just in any book, it would probably be in restricted section.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you are going to be reading, it'd have to be something that tries you, you know. Like, you know, some of Hagrid's textbooks that try to eat you if you aren't careful with them. Let's see. Harry gets another letter back from Sirius saying, nice try. And Beauxbatons and Durmstrang start to arrive, which I'm going to skip, and pick up with the chapter Goblet of Fire. Okay. So Dumbledore welcomes everybody. Big old feast. And I want to pick up at bottom of 255. So Dumbledore's explaining the rules and such, and says, he taps the casket, the lid creaks open, and he pulls out a large, roughly hewn wooden cup with flames dancing around the brim. Closes the casket, puts the goblet carefully on top of it. It says, anybody wishing to submit themselves as a champion must write their name and school clearly upon a slip of parchment and drop it into the goblet. Aspiring champions have 24 hours in which to put their names forward. Tomorrow night, Halloween, Goblet will return the names of the three it is judged most worthy to represent their schools. Okay? It's going to be in the entrance hall tonight, where it will be freely accessible to all those wishing to complete. To ensure no underage student yields to temptation, I will be drawing an age line around the Goblet of Fire once it has been placed in the entrance hall. Nobody under the age of 17 will be able to cross this line. Now, notice the little misspeaking Dumbledore does there. He says, to ensure that no underage student yields to temptation, I'll be putting an age line. Does the age line stop them from yielding to temptation? No. Because Fred and George do what? They give themselves an aging potion, big long white beards. They try. They don't stop. The temptation doesn't stop. It just, the age line prevents you from being successful. Okay? So, he says one last thing. Any of you wishing to compete this tournament need to know it is not to be entered into lightly. Once a champion has been selected by the Goblet of Fire, he or she is obliged to see the tournament through to the end. Placing of your name in the goblet constitutes a binding magical contract. There can be no change of heart once you become a champion. Therefore, be sure. Now, what were we told earlier about previous Triwizard tournaments?
People do.
It stopped because it does
They stopped doing it because too many people died. So they've changed the rules this time. Nobody's going to die. Okay?
Do the books ever say what happens if you break the magical contract? This magical contract?
Not this magical contract.
I know the other one.
We're told what happens when you break some magical contracts or attempt to. Narcissa, Snape. What's the name of it?
Unbreakable vow.
The Unbreakable Vow. Duh. The Unbreakable Vow. What happens if you break the Unbreakable Vow? You die. Okay? We're going to see two people get married, and we're going to be told that that is an unbreakable contract. Till it's, till death do us part. Even though we do see single parents within the novel. But I think in almost, I'm just kind of going through and making sure this is right. I think in all of those cases where you do have single parent run families, one of the two parents was not magical. I can't think of a single one where there are two magical parents and one has split, unless there's a really obvious one that my mind just, because I've talked about this before in other classes. It's a very interesting thing. It's like Rowling doesn't allow for divorce within the magical world.
That's so interesting because she herself.
Yeah,
And it
it's
wasn't her choice.
right. It's extremely interesting, and especially what she does with quote unquote broken families, or as I often talk about them, functional versus dysfunctional families. I mean, it's really important in these novels, and we'll talk about it more as we go a little bit farther on. Okay, so we see the Beauxbatons and we see Durmstrang. Ron has his little bromance going on because Victor Crumb is there. Let's skip a bunch. Hermione's going on about spew, which I think is how one needs to pronounce this. She talks to Hagrid about it, page 265. And I'm not going to say much about spew other than this and maybe one or two other passages. Hagrid says, "It'd be doing them an unkindness, Hermione. It's in their nature to look after humans. That's what they like, see? You'd be making them unhappy to take away their work and insulting them if you tried to pay them." She says, "But Harry set Dobby free. He was over the moon about it. And we heard he's asking for wages now." "Yeah, well, you get weirdos in every breed. I'm not saying there isn't odd elf who take freedom, but you never persuade most of them." Okay? Nothing doing. Later on, we're going to see Hermione, make hats and leave them all over the place for house elves to pick up and maybe one to, try on. What must Hermione do to the house elves in order to get them to accept her offer of freedom? What must she make them? Okay, clothes. What else? She has to make them miserable. She has to make them realize what about their lives? That they're slaves. That they're horrible. Okay? How can she do that? Does she bring all the house elves together and, organize them and say, you guys have it really, really, really bad, and just beat into their minds what a horrible, rotten, foul existence they have? Because that's what she needs to do. See? Why does Dobby accept freedom so willingly?
His life was so miserable with Malfoy's.
Okay. Compare Dobby's life with Winky's. How bad did Winky have it with the Crouch family?
Probably not great, but better than Dobby.
Wasn't great, but better than Dobby. How did Winky think of the Crouch family? Loved them. Or was she merely brainwashed into living? I mean, it's Stockholm Syndrome kind of a thing. That's what Hermione's got to do. She's got to convince the house elves that they've been brainwashed all their lives, that they're not really happy serving humans. So Hagrid says, you'd be doing them unkindness. Now, unkindness, Rowling might just mean what we all mean by unkindness. It wouldn't be nice. She might also be thinking, because she is a quote-unquote scholar of language of such, majoring in classics and French, she might have an understanding of what unkindness means when you look at its etymology. It means unnaturalness. Going against, as Hagrid puts it, he says, It's in their nature to look after humans. Okay? Kind means one's nature. Like when you ask, well, what kind of thing is that? You're asking what? What is its essence? What is its nature? So, when he says you'd be doing them unkindness, you'd be making them unnatural, to go against their nature. How do we... Is Hermione right? I mean, within the course of all 7 novels. Is Hermione right about the nature of house elves? Or is Hagrid right? What does Rowling do with the house elves after this book? Nothing. She doesn't really pick up the ball that she created, okay, with Hermione and Spew, and do anything else with it other than Creature in the next book. And why is Creature the way he is the first, well, all of that book, and the first half of book 6? How's Creature been treated all his life? Terribly. Well, take that back. He hasn't been treated terribly by, don't explain the initials, R.A.B.
Right.
Or by his mother. He's been treated terribly by I can't remember his middle name, S.B. Okay. But we see a change in Creature. Once he's treated nicely. And other than that, there's nothing. I mean, we hear Dumbledore say some words at the end of book 5 about house elves. And then we see Dumbledore say a little bit about them again in book 6. But other than that, we end book 7. And the house elves help in the battle in book 7. On whose side? Hogwarts side. Okay.
Those elves are treated really well by Dumbledore.
But, yeah, they are. Okay. So is it merely a matter of treatment? In other words, you can be a slave or you can be a servant. And the two can be very, very different. Or, another way of looking at it is you can be a slave and you can be a slave. You can be a slave who lives in, the hovel, or you can be a slave who lives in the quote-unquote big house kind of a thing. And she draws a distinction between those. The one, we have written accounts of this, can be treated like family, but notice the operative word there. Like. Not family. Like family. And the others are treated like, as Ron loves to say, the things on the bottom of your shoe. Okay? But she never continues the idea. She introduces things throughout the course of the novels that seem really important at one specific moment, and then it just gets dropped. Why? Because it's like a plot device that doesn't figure importantly in later. So what's the plot importance for Hermione's emphasis on the house elves within this book?
I think it just defines the characters of their superiors. Like Sirius says about Barty Crouch Senior. It's like, look at the way that a man treats his inferiors, and that's real.
Yeah, which we're going to get to, because those exact same words that Sirius says are going to come back to haunt him. Well, not him personally, but they're going to come back to haunt, later on, kind of. Okay? So, they go back into the Great Hall. The goblet spits out the names. First name it spits out, 269, Victor Crumb. Never really any doubt, right? I mean, okay? Ron, no surprises there. Next name it spits out, Fleur Delacour, flower of the heart. That's what her name literally means. Isn't that pretty? Okay? Ron, Harry says, it's her, Ron. As a girl who so resembled Avila got gracefully to her feet. Hermione, look, they're all disappointed. All the Beauxbatons are like, oh, God, no, not her. Okay? telling us maybe Fleur's not the brightest of the Beauxbatons. Or maybe she is and she's just the least liked. After all, the brightest in Harry's year is Hermione. How many friends does Hermione really have? Harry, Ron. And then later on we get Neville and Ginny and, Luna. But, what does Ron say in that first book? She's got to know why she doesn't have any friends. Okay? Third champion, the Hogwarts champion, Cedric Diggory, of course. Why? Handsome. Hello. We've seen him before. It's being set up. Ron, no. Dumbledore, excellent. This is all good. And then Dumbledore starts speaking because the goblet starts, turning red again. And Harry Potter. Notice, he doesn't say the second Hogwarts champion. He just says Harry Potter. He doesn't give a school name. I didn't put my name in. I didn't. Hermione and Ron stare back at him. So Harry goes up. He goes off through the door. And we hear the conversation between Madame Maxime, Igor Karkaroff, Snape, Ludo Bagman, Barty Crouch. Okay. Madame Maxime, page 275, asks, "What is the meaning of this Dumbledore?" Karkaroff, "I'd rather like to know that myself, Dumbledore. 2 Hogwarts champions? I don't remember anyone telling me the whole school's allowed 2. Maybe I haven't read the rules carefully enough." Madame Maxime, "C'est impossible. Hogwarts cannot have 2 champions. It is most unjust." Okay, so they go back and forth. And finally, they kind of appeal to Bagman and Crouch. Bagman says, the rules are the rules. We got to follow the rules. Or Crouch says that. Okay? Karkaroff, 277. Then we get to add more. If you get 2, then we get 2. Okay? And finally, Moody chimes in. He just entered the room, page 278. And Moody says, "Empty threat, Karkaroff. You can't leave your champion now. He's got to compete. They've all got to compete. Binding magical contract. Like Dumbledore said. Convenient, eh?" He's like, what do you mean convenient? "I don't understand you, Moody. Don't you? It's very simple, Karkaroff. If someone put Potter's name in that goblet, no one would have to compete it if it came out. If it came out." Okay? Madame Maxine, somebody who wants to give Hogwarts 2 bites at the apple. If anyone's got a reason to complain, it's Potter. The funny thing, I don't hear him saying a word. In other words, Harry should be the one going, "I don't want to do this." How old is he? He's 14. He's 3 years too young. Fleur, why should he complain? He has the chance to compete. We've all been hoping to be chosen for weeks and weeks, an honor for our schools, 1,000 galleons in prize money. It's a chance many would die for. Maybe someone's hoping Potter is going to die for it. And they're all like, "Oh, there it is, dark wizards out to get him." "Imagining things, am I?" says Moody. "Seeing things, eh? It was a skilled witch or wizard who put the boy's name in that goblet." Madame Maxime, "Prove it." She says, "What evidence?" "Because I hoodwinked a very powerful magical object. It would have needed an exceptionally strong confundus charm to bamboozle that goblet." Okay. Notice, Moody seems to understand this, but nobody else raises this or even entertains that question. Though Karkaroff does say, "You seem to have given this a lot of thought. Why not push?" Okay. He says, "There are those who will turn innocent occasions to their advantage. It's my job to think the way dark wizards do, Karkaroff, as you ought to remember." What has he just done?
Gave
He stepped over a line there, a big bright line, which is don't talk about faculty's backgrounds in front of students. What's Karkaroff's background? He's a Death Eater. Was a Death Eater. Alastor, says Dumbledore. Shut it. Okay? So he says, we don't know how this situation arose. He says, to Madame Maxine, you got a solution, I'm all ears. What do we know? Bunch of names went in, 4 names came out, the 4 have got to compete. It's binding. So what could Harry do? Okay, we're told he has to compete. It's really easy to compete and not win, right? I mean, I've done all kinds of sports all my life, track, pole vault, soccer, whatever. It's really easy to come in last on things. Just don't do it. So, he gets the first task. What's he have to get? He's got to get the egg from the dragon, right? Walk out and sit down.
Yeah.
That could be competing. Of course, what's everybody going to think of him? Coward? Loser?
Like, oh,
He'll
Harry's-
never hear the end of that.
Harry's so great. He doesn't even need to compete.
Except, what problem does he have that is part of his nature? He has a thirst to prove himself. Because everybody thinks, how did he survive? How is he the boy who lived? Chance? Accident? Freak of nature? Okay. So, Cedric asks Harry, how'd you do it, Harry? Tell me, how did you get your name in? Page 282. Harry, I didn't. I didn't put it in. I was telling the truth. Okay. See you then. Now, when Cedric says, dot. Okay. What does the dot imply? Okay, it's just a pause, literally. Does it imply anything else? Does it imply, sure you didn't. Okay. So Harry goes off to the Gryffindor common room, and he's cheered up one side and down the other. Page 286. Ron tells him, congratulations. Right in the middle of the page. Because Ron wasn't there for the celebrations. What do you mean, congratulations? Well, I mean, no one else got across the age line. I mean, not even Fred and George. But would you use the invisibility cloak? Invisibility cloak wouldn't have got me over that line. How does he know? Did he try? We don't know how he knows that. Is he just spitting that out? Right. Because I thought you might have told me if it was the cloak, because it would have covered both of us, wouldn't it? But you found another way, did you? What's Ron really getting at?
You put your name in it. But you didn't invite me to put mine
Exactly.
You left me behind.
Harry, listen. I didn't put my name in that goblet. Someone else must have done it. What would they do that for? I don't know. Kill me? Ron's eyebrows go, like off his head. You can tell me the truth. Okay, when Harry said, I don't know, he felt it would sound very melodramatic to say, to kill me. He didn't actually say that. Ron's eyebrows are way up there. Or does he say, to kill me? He felt it would sound very melodramatic to say, to kill me. That's, the way I'm reading it is it's subjunctive. It's condition contrary to effect, that he doesn't really say it. But maybe he does really say it. Because why else would Ron's eyebrows go...
I thought maybe he was like, question like, why would he do that? And he's like waiting for an answer.
Yeah, it could be. It's okay, you can tell me the truth. I mean, if you don't want everybody else to know, don't. I didn't put my name in that goblet. Okay. Only this morning. You said you would have done it last night. You know, I'm not stupid, you know. Doing a really good impression. So, what has happened to the Unbreakable Three? One for all for one. Unless you leave me out. And then it's all for two and two for two. You know, and the third one. Why does Ron turn this way?
So Harry, in order for Harry to feel more alone going through like first and second test, I think. Or is it just the first?
Just the first. Okay. What did Ron see when he looked in the mirror of Erised? Himself standing alone. Why? What did Dumbledore say? He's always standing in his brother's shadow. What's he been doing since his first year at Hogwarts? Harry's shadow.
Doesn't Hermione say that he's jealous?
Yeah, she makes it very clear that he's jealous. Okay. So Harry writes a letter to Sirius, tells him what's going on. And let's see here. Yeah, 295. Harry goes down to talk to Hagrid. Or actually, it's during one of Hagrid's classes. And Hagrid asks him, 294 at the bottom, no idea who put you in it for? Who put you in for it, Harry? Harry, you believe I didn't do it then? Of course I do. You're saying it wasn't you, and I believe you, and Dumbledore believes you. I wish I knew who did it. They look out over the lawn. The class is all scattered around. Hagrid says, looks like they're having fun. And then he tells Harry, I don't know, Harry, school champion. Everything seems to happen to you, doesn't it? Harry didn't answer. Yes, everything did seem to happen to him. That was more or less what Hermione had said as they had walked around the lake. And that was the reason, according to her, that Ron was no longer talking to him. What are we going to see Harry do fairly shortly? He's going to get one of those badges that says what? Potter stinks. And he... Louder?
Potter really stinks.
Yeah, Potter really stinks. And he throws it at Ron and says what? Anybody remember? Now maybe you'll have a scar too. That's what you want. You want to be famous? Okay. So we see the buttons. First, page 297, support Cedric Diggory, the real Hogwarts champion. Okay. They go off to defense against the dark arts. Excuse me, they go off to potions. And Malfoy tries to curse Harry. Harry tries to curse Malfoy. They kind of miss each other. Malfoy, 299, uses Dens Algio. Dens, like dentist, Algio, increase. So, make the teeth bigger. Harry uses Furnunculus. And Hermione gets hit in the face. Okay. Meanwhile, Goyle has the boils coming up on him. And we see Harry tell Snape what happened. And Snape sends Goyle to the hospital wing. And Ron says, notice, Ron says, Malfoy got Hermione. Look! He forced Hermione to show Snape her teeth. She was doing her best to hide them with her hands, so this was difficult, as they had now grown down past her collar. So her teeth are down here. Her upper teeth are down here. Snape, I see no difference. Wow. Okay. Hermione runs away, you know. Harry's got to go to the weighing of the wands. He meets Rita Skeeter. What do we see from this little interview with Rita Skeeter?
She's the worst.
How so?
She has her stupid little quill, and then it writes down everything that it loves about Rita.
It writes down everything Harry doesn't say, right? Okay. Who does Rita work for? What is the Daily Prophet in our world?
New York Times.
New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times. Those are all what?
Reputable news sources.
Reputable news sources. You're almost like a plant. I mean, I'm getting the exact right answers I want. Okay? Those are reputable news sources.
Is she trying to make a stab at mainstream media now, or mainstream news outlets?
She probably wouldn't accept that term, mainstream media, because mainstream media is a term that comes from where on the political spectrum?
Fox News.
It comes from the right wing. Okay? Of course, they also call it the lamestream, media if you're channeling Sarah Palin. But yeah, I think she is. I think she is taking a stab, okay, at the media. Why? Why go after the media? I mean, Rowling, even in 2000, even in the late 90s, she was thoroughly kind of, left of center. At the time when she was writing these to now, she's moved quite a bit farther left of center. I mean, she was kind of lefty moderate when these were written. She's moved much farther to the left since that time.
Was she attacked for the first 3 books?
Attacked. Now, there's an interesting word. She wasn't necessarily attacked, but she also wasn't necessarily portrayed in the most positive of lights, especially before her marriage. Okay? Because she was frequently described, when the first couple books came out, unwed, mother. Well, it wasn't her fault that she was unwed when her daughter was born. That was her lover/husband's doing, who ditched her. Okay? Which image, let's say, is going to come up later in the books. I mean, she's going to have a portrayal of a woman who has kind of a whirlwind romance, gets married, gets pregnant, husband ditches her. Yeah, the Riddle family. Where, I mean, I don't know that this is intended. I think it probably is. But wow, does she ever get her revenge on her, husband. Okay? If one reads it that way. So, we see Rita Skeeter, and how accurately does she report her interview with Harry? Not at all. How accurately did she report what happened at the Quidditch World Cup? There was some truth to it, but it was only some. She left out, things. Okay? So Dumbledore comes and rescues Harry, and we see the weighing of the wands, and what little bit of information. Now, those of you who have read all 7 books should be aware of this. Those of you who haven't read books 5, 6, and 7 yet, you will see this. So I'm planting this idea in your mind because it gets planted in Harry's mind here. He overhears Victor Crumb talk about his wand. And he finds out Victor Crumb's wand wasn't made by Ollivander. And discovers there are other wand makers. Okay? A guy named Grigorovich made his wand. That little tidbit of information gets put in Harry's mind. And later on in book 7, at a very opportune moment, he remembers it. Okay? And says something about it to Victor Crumb at a very inopportune moment. Kind of makes Victor Crumb wonder, who are you? And it's,
Back to the wands. I wonder if Rowling had the idea of their battle in the graveyard when she wrote the first book and he got the wand from Ollivander.
I think she probably did, because when the first book was published and subsequently, I remember, for example, she did this one interview on 60 Minutes. I think after book 4 came out. And it was an interview kind of like in her study or in her office. And, she pointed out during the interview, this is the set of notes for book 1, and it was like a legal-sized box with legal-sized paper and notes in it. And she said, and here's the notes for 2 and 3 and 4, and here are the notes for the future books. And she had already these legal-sized boxes of notes for 5, 6, and 7. And she said early on that she already knew how book 7 ended. Okay? In fact, she said, long before book 7 was published, that the last word of book 7 would be Scar. And then when she got around to actually writing it, she admitted, I changed it. It's not going to be Scar. And everybody's like, oh no, because people were coming up with all these theories about what that was like, Harry's scar was, like, and Harry no longer had a scar, kind of a thing. Okay? But she doesn't do that. So yeah, I think it's probable that she had that in mind.
Like she probably wrote the outlines first for everything, and then wrote the books.
Yeah, I mean, in that interview, she talks about, finding names. Go to, when I do my course in London, lots of times students will go up to Edinburgh because they want to go to the Elephant Cafe where she wrote quite a bit of it. But they also then just walk around Edinburgh and you find names. Like there's a Dursley place. Well, that's how she got the name for Dursley. And there are a bunch of other names that figure in. Some of the names are from the area near Gloucestershire where she grew up. For example, book 7, they go off to the Forest of Dean. Well, the Forest of Dean is an actual forest just outside Gloucestershire where she played as a child. She actually lived in a house near the Forest of Dean, I think I mentioned this the first day, that had a room under the stairs, a cupboard under the stairs, and the house had a trap door to a cellar beneath it. Okay. Anyways, Harry gets a letter back from Sirius at the end of that chapter, page 312. Because remember, he sent Sirius a letter, don't worry about it, and then he talks about, another letter, having been named Hogwarts champion. Harry, can't say everything I would like to in a letter. It's too risky in case the owl is intercepted. Okay, so what does this tell us? Communications are being watched somehow? We need to talk face to face. Can you ensure that you are alone by the fire in Gryffindor Tower at 1 o'clock in the morning on the 22nd of November? I know better than anyone that you can look after yourself. How does he know that? Save my bacon. I mean, what did Harry do previous book? He fought off 100 Dementors. If he can do that, he can take care of himself. And while you're around Dumbledore and Moody, I don't think anyone will be able to hurt you. Someone seems to be having a good try. Entering you in that tournament would have been very risky, especially right under Dumbledore's nose. Be on the watch, Harry. I still want to hear anything unusual. Okay? So, next chapter is the Hungarian Horntail. And what do we see? Well, we get the first news account that we read. I mean, we saw the little bit earlier about Arnold Weasley, in the second book, when Malfoy read from the Daily Prophet. And we read, page 314, I suppose I get my strength from my parents. I know they'd be very proud of me if they could see me now. Yes, sometimes at night I still cry about them. I'm not ashamed to admit it, all this nonsense. How he's found love at last, with Hermione, his close friend, Colin Creevey. How close are Harry and Colin? Ever. Books 1 through 7. How significant is Colin Creevey to Harry's life? Zilch, nada. What happens to him? Finally, book 7. He gets killed. She should have done that earlier. Okay. Colin Creevey is what kind of character within the novels? A nuisance. He's always sticking his nose where it doesn't belong. Okay. As does his little brother, Dennis. So, we start to hear a little bit about Cho. And the Saturday before the task, let's see here. They go off to Hogsmeade. Harry, Hermione do, because Ron's not hanging around. And let's see. Page 322. Harry sees Hagrid and Moody get up to leave. He waves to Hagrid. Hagrid says, "All right, Hermione?" She says, "Hello." Moody limps around the table, bends down. Harry thought he was reading the Spew notebook, till he muttered, "Nice cloak, Potter." Harry's got on his invisibility cloak. Moody sees right through it. Yeah, it can see through invisibility cloaks. It's come in useful at times, I can tell you. Later on, Book 7, we're going to be told the Deathly Hallows invisibility cloak totally conceals one. It cannot be voided. Though it's put there in the terms of there are no spells that can break its concealment. The eye is not a spell. Okay? I just think this is a possible problem.
What
Yes.
is the map?
Yeah, I know.
Would that be-
That's a problem. It seems to me that's a problem. Okay? So, they go out, and Hagrid tells Harry, "Meet me at midnight." He says, "Okay." So he goes down. What's going on in Harry's mind? I've got to meet Sirius at 1 o'clock. So he goes down. He's got his cloak on. And he follows Hagrid because who is Hagrid with? It's like he's tagging along on a date. And this is really weird. So what does he see Hagrid and Madame Maxime do? 325. You'll enjoy this. We're seeing, trust me. Only don't go telling anyone I showed you, right? You're not supposed to know. Oh, of course not. Fluttering her long black eyelashes. Then Hagrid shows her dragons. 4 fully grown, enormous, vicious-looking dragons. Okay? And Harry sees them also. Hungarian horntail and all. And there's Charlie Weasley. So Hagrid asks what breeds there are. Charlie tells him. And Charlie's like, wow, romantic date there, Hagrid. So he also realizes Karkaroff has seen them. So now Harry knows Maxime has seen the dragons. Therefore, he assumes, Fleur is going to know. Karkaroff has seen the dragons. Therefore, Krum is going to know. Harry's seen the dragons, personally, so he knows. Okay? Who doesn't? Cedric doesn't know. So he goes back to the common room, and he talks with Sirius. Tells Sirius about the dragons. He goes, "Don't worry about the dragons. We can deal with those." Page 332 at the top. He says, "There's things I need to warn you about." What? Karkaroff. He was a Death Eater. He was in Azkaban with me. What? So he talks about Karkaroff got released because he named names, did a deal with the Ministry. So you think Karkaroff put my name? He goes, "I don't know. Could have." And reading between the lines of that Skeeter Woman's article last month, Moody was attacked the night before he started at Hogwarts. Yeah, I know, she says it's false alarm. He says, but probably doesn't mean it was. He says there's other strange things. 333. Death Eaters seem to be a bit more active than usual lately. They showed themselves at the Quidditch World Cup, didn't they? Someone set off the dark mark. And there's a Ministry of Magic witch who's gone missing. Bertha Jorkins? Yes. Exactly. She disappeared in Albania. And that's definitely where Voldemort was rumored to be last. And she would have known the Triwizard Tournament was coming up, wouldn't she? Okay. Why Albania? We're told several times, Dumbledore's spies tell him that he was in Albania. Tell Dumbledore that Voldemort was in Albania. Of all the countries in the world, there's 190 something? Why Albania of all of them? It's the one country most Americans and Brits really have no knowledge of at all, because it's a little teeny tiny pinprick of a country. So why it? Okay? It used to be a Soviet bloc country back during the Cold War. So what does that mean? Albania, of all the countries in the world, was the one that was, it's not anymore, the most fully, quote-unquote, atheist. It had written into its state constitution, okay, after it became a Soviet bloc kind of satellite. No supernatural, God doesn't exist, no freedom of religion. The Soviet Union had in its constitution freedom of religion. You could freely practice whatever religion you want. Okay, all the priests in the Russian Orthodox Church in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s were KGB agents. All of them. Okay? So you had that problem going on. Those that weren't KGB agents answered to the KGB. They spoke to the KGB. Well, Albania didn't have that problem because there weren't churches. They closed them all. It was the most perfect atheist country in the world. Well, that's where Voldemort goes. What did Voldemort say through Quirrell back at the first book? My master taught me, that he was a fool with ridiculous ideas of good and evil. What were those ridiculous ideas? There is no good in evil. His ridiculous idea was that there was good and evil. Voldemort taught him there's no good and evil.
Either those with power or those who don't.
There is only power in what? Those too weak to seek it. All right? It's a very Nietzschean idea, whom I've already mentioned. So, she was in Albania. Okay? Sirius goes on. I knew her. She was at Hogwarts when I was, a few years above your dad and me. She was an idiot. Nosy but no brains. It's a good combination, Harry. I mean, she'd be easy to lure into a trap. So, you think Voldemort knows about the Triwizard Tournament? Is that what you mean? You think Karkaroff might be here on his orders? Don't know. In other words, it's a supposition, but I don't have proof. Okay? So you think that they're trying to kill me? Dragons would be a good way to do it. I mean, nobody would say, the dragon was evil kind of a thing. It's dragons do what dragons do. So he says, Harry, there's a way to get around them. Don't try a stunning spell. Harry hears a noise. Sirius disappears. Doesn't get to tell Harry how to get rid of the dragons. Later on, what was he going to come up with? Conjunctivitis. Make it so the dragon can't see you. Okay? It's Ron. Ron comes down, asks, what are you doing down here? Harry asks, what are you doing down here? He says, I just wondered where you, nothing, I'm going back to bed. Just thought you'd come nosing around. Throws the thing. So we get the first task. And notice the first task is what? Retrieve the golden egg from the dragon. Why golden? Is that just the color of dragon's eggs? These aren't dragon's eggs, right? No, they're not. I don't know that J.K. Rowling had this in her mind or even knew this, but it really gives me pause. I really wonder. Winston Churchill in the Second World War, once the Brits had figured out the German Enigma machine, if you saw the movie The Intelligence Game, Imitation Game, fantastic movie. Makes you really angry at, British culture and stuff. Anyways, the intelligence gap. Once they figured out how to break the German code, and they came up with the Enigma machine, which enabled them to break German code, they would get German code, and the code would get put into the Enigma machine, and like a ticker tape of what the code meant would be spat out. That code would then be taken and put into a golden egg and hand delivered to Churchill. Churchill was the only one who read what it meant. That is, there's not somebody who gets them information from the Enigma machine who then types it up. It is typed up by the machine. Nobody else sees this. It's just taken off, put in the egg, hand delivered to Tolkien. Churchill. Hand delivered to Churchill. Tolkien worked for a while in the intelligence department for the Brits because he was a master at languages and such. I don't know that Rowling knew that story. But sometime in the early 2000s, and I don't remember what year, well, in the late 1990s, or in the mid-1990s, what are called Churchill's Cabinet War Rooms was opened up as a kind of a tourist spot in London, where you could go into the rooms that Churchill ran the Second World War for the Allies from. Churchill and Ike and stuff, okay? But it was just, individual rooms. Like you saw the room where Churchill slept, you see a half-burned cigar of Churchill's, etc., and all these other rooms, okay? And all exactly as they were. I mean, when they opened that place up in around 1990, it had been sealed for 45 years. I mean, it was left like it was at the end of World War II. They just sealed the doors, and then they opened it up. They did some things inside so you could go in and walk around. In the early 2000s, they expanded that from being the Churchill, or the Cabinet War Rooms, to the Churchill Museum. So there's an additional area that's all about Winston Churchill. That's where the Enigma machine and the egg part are. But that's after the publication of this book. I just don't know whether or not the information about the golden egg was available prior to this. But if it wasn't, it's odd, because the egg is not just an egg, right? The egg has the clue for the second task, okay? So what do we see? What's the importance of this task?
You have to complete this task in order to be able to complete the second
Okay. You got to get the egg, first of all. What else? What happens at the end? Ron realizes somebody's trying to kill you. Why? A sane person wouldn't put their name in. I mean, that's kind of the conclusion he comes to. Okay? What else do we learn?
This is the only task where there's no hint of forewarning about, well, supposed to be, about what it's supposed to be like spur of the moment courage.
Yeah.
Kind of feel.
Though they all do know about it. How does Cedric learn? How does Harry tell him? Remember, it's like a couple days before, and Harry,
He split his bag open
yeah,
Oh yeah.
to get him away from everyone else.
trying to remember where that is. Pages 340 and following. Harry's thinking, I know, Fleur knows, Crumb knows. Cedric doesn't. He splits Cedric's bag, bottom of 340. Cedric, first task is dragons. What? Dragons. They've got 4, 1 for each of us. We've got to get past them. How do you know? I know. Okay? So, Cedric leaves. Okay, now notice what Harry has told him. Almost everything, right? The only thing he leaves out is we've got to get the egg. But he does say we've got to get past them. Okay? Why are you telling me? Harry looked at him in disbelief. He was sure Cedric wouldn't have asked that if he'd seen the dragons himself. Harry wouldn't have let his worst enemy face, well, maybe Malfoy or Snape. It's just fair, isn't it? We all know now we are on an even footing. Fairness is not a quality of Gryffindor. Fairness is who? Those Hufflepuffs. Loyal, just, but it is a quality of chivalry. And Gryffindors are chivalric. So, Mad Eye comes out. Come with me, Potter. Off you go, Diggory. Harry, I gotta be, never mind that. In my office. That was a very decent thing you did, Potter. What did I do? You know. And so they talk about the, censors and stuff. So, found out about the dragons, have you? Harry's like, yeah. It's all right. Cheating's a traditional part of the Triwizard Tournament. And Harry's like, phew. But he doesn't tell him who told him. So, Moody says, got any idea how you're going to get past the dragon? Harry, nope. I'm not going to tell you. Play to your strengths. What does Harry think? You're going to see when we get to the Lord of the Rings, Gandalf's going to tell Frodo that he must use such heart, strength, and wits as he has, as he makes his way to Mount Doom. And here Frodo's going to say, but I don't have any of those things. I don't have any heart. I'm a coward. I don't have any strength. I'm a midget. And I don't have any wits. I'm stupid. Okay? Gandalf says, yes, you do. Harry, I don't got any strengths. Excuse me, you got strengths if I say you've got them. What are you best at? Harry's thinking what? Academics. What's he best at? Nothing. Quidditch. I'm good at sports. Yay for jocks, That's right, you're a damn good flyer from whatever. Yeah, but I'm not allowed a broom. Second piece of advice, get what you need. In other words, you can't carry a broom in there, but what can you do? Well, what has Flitwick just by chance been teaching them? The Oxio Charm. So, Hermione teaches him the Oxio Charm all night long. And he gets there, he gets his broom, and what do we hear from Ludo Bagman? Great Scott, he can fly. Are you watching this, Mr. Crumb? What's he mean? You got some competition here, buddy. What else does Ludo know, probably? That Harry plays Seeker? I think Ludo's saying, ooh, you're going to have your competition for you when this kid gets out of here. If he wants to play Seeker for England, Bulgaria's going to have a hard time. So, they each get their things. Dobby asks if he can come see Harry, 383. Harry says yes. Then we get the unexpected task. What time is it? 12:39. What's the unexpected task? The Yule Ball. Why is that a task? Why is it not the unexpected pleasure?
Because all the champions have to start the dance on.
Okay. Is it a task for Hermione? No. Is it well, it should, yeah, I'll go ahead and ask this. Is it a task for Padme and Parvati? Okay, think about that before you shake your heads. Remember who they go with. Harry and Ron. Okay, ladies, would either, in the context of this book, would any of you want to go with either of them? No, why not? They're idiots. Harry and Ron are complete idiots when it comes to dealing with the members of the opposite sex, right? Because they take Padme and Parvati, who are described as appearing how? Gorgeous. Okay? Long braided black hair, gold woven in or braided into that. And how do they treat them at the dance? They just ignore them. Garbage. So that they finally get up and go off with two other guys. Okay? Why? Is it because they're complete morons, Harry and Ron? Maybe not complete, mostly so. Why does Ron behave the way he does at the Yule Ball? He likes Hermione. How do we know?
So jealous, angry.
Right after this, she tells Harry that she has realized that he likes her, but he himself has not realized it.
What does she tell Ron?
That if he wanted to go with her, that he should have.
You should have asked me first. Okay. It's a test for Harry, though. Why? Who does he want to ask?
Sure.
Why doesn't he?
That doesn't sit
He does. He does. When?
after Cedric.
Too late. Okay. She starts in this book weaving all this, I don't know what you want to call it, adolescent sexual angst in the books. And we get it in here and in book 5, and then what does she do with it? She kind of just drops it aside. We don't see it really in 6 and 7. Okay? No, we see it, I mean, we get hints of it. Thank you. There are slightly bigger issues to deal with than, ooh, who do I like, you know? I mean, there are elements of it, but it largely gets dropped because of the larger problems. Go ahead.
It's just that's how child development is, pretty much mentally.
Yeah, I mean, she, as a 40-year-old or so in writing this, she remembers, I think, pretty well what it's like to be 14, 15, 16, etc. And, you know, I can't say from the female's perspective, but from the male, she nails us guys pretty good. She's got a pretty good understanding of what it's like, especially if you're shy at 14, because that's how Harry comes across. Ron's just stupid. Because he likes Hermione, but what does he never see her as, we're told? A girl. Until he sees her as like Cinderella. Because that's how she's described. Notice, her hair is no longer what? Emma Watson is not well cast. Why? Because even 11-year-old Emma Watson, you put her in a sack, she's still going to be cute. And she doesn't have the big bushy hair. She also doesn't have the big front teeth. Not the big front teeth that she later gets. Okay? But she comes down, you know, the stairway looking like Cinderella. And Ron's like, damn, she could have been mine, you know. I could have been a contender, but, you know, she's off with Vicky, as he later calls her. Okay, we'll stop there, and we'll pick up with probably Rita Skeeter's Scoop. And I would expect a quiz next time over, I don't remember if I said there would be one today.
You said there might be.
There might be? Okay, I completely forgot yesterday.